Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Higgins, licensed psychologist and relationship coach, and this is the Empowered Relationship Podcast, where we explore how to cultivate relational connection, security, and growth. Today, I am joined by Dr. Rebecca Heiss, a stress physiologist who studies how stress shapes behavior and connection. In this conversation, we explore how stress hijacks connection and intimate relationship and how couples can work with their nervous systems to grow closer rather than pull apart. And I'll also put a free relationship guide, shifting criticism into connected communication. So this guide helps you workshop, if you will, how to approach your significant other with more of a reveal of this concern, pain, worry, fear, or perhaps a request so that they can be in a better position to respond to what is important to you, rather than getting off track on this criticism defensiveness loop that, again, typically creates more conflict and more disconnection. Again, you can find that on today's show notes. Again, drjessicahiggins.com. Before we begin, I want to invite you to join me in taking a simple moment of pause and doing that with a deep inhale and a deep exhale. Giving our systems an opportunity to settle and perhaps become more present and aware in this moment. Let's get started with today's episode. Dr. Rebecca Heiss, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. And you are a stress psychologist, and I don't know if many people know what that is. You want to briefly just give some context to your background?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'm a stress physiologist. I help people sort of transform that stress energy and use it differently. So that's what I do.
Great. Thank you. And then how did you become interested in this particular aspect?
I'm a pretty stressed out person. I think very often people who have high stress or high anxiety end up going into the field that I'm in because we really want to resolve it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I was in school, I was studying cortisol and understanding behavior as a result. And I just kept going to school because it felt like it was so exciting to me to be able to understand my own behavior better. And then ultimately to be able to help others was this incredible gift, bringing it out of the lab, right, and into the real world to apply these actions.
Yes. Well, I love that you share about your personal experience and also having played sports competitively.
Oh,
And just
yeah.
there's different elements around where we find ourselves or the spaces that we're in that might add levels of pressure, add levels of stress, and being able to perform in this more optimal zone.
Well, I'll say if you don't know the longer version of the story that you just heard, there was a moment when I was in academia and I unfortunately my sister-in-law, who was like a sister to me, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And it's one of those moments that pulls the rug out. And everybody has these moments in their life, right? Whether it's a divorce or a terminal diagnosis, there's stressful events that are going to happen. And in that moment, I took a look at my own life and I realized that almost every decision I'd made out of fear, like I played it safe. In order to honor my own mortality, I decided in that moment to stop playing safe. So I quit my job, sold my house, and divorced my husband that month. Um,
Wow.
yes, yeah, I'm not recommending this. It was a really stressful move, but it really helped me and forced me into that space where I was really practicing what I preached.
So, if I'm understanding you, it sounds like you were recognizing that making fear-based choices results to stress.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think a longer term stress, it's more like a slow boil, right?
Yeah.
And I've been sitting in that simmering space for a long time. And I decided to turn off the heat. And really, I made a really stressful move, three of them, in fact. Ultimately, it was something that gave me the relief that I needed.
Yeah.
And I was able to utilize that stress in a different way.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And so it sounds like
Yeah.
you're noticing things of discontent that perhaps you were avoiding.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's our natural move, and it's what we're told to do so frequently, right? When we're given advice on how to manage stress, it's often, well, go get a massage or self-care or go do yoga. Look, all of those things are great, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to relieve your stress, right? We're running away from these tigers. We're running away from the stressful things that we're going to have to deal with, and they don't go away. So,
Mhm.
whether it's a difficult conversation or something.
And so, people who are listening, what might you say about patterns that they might recognize that are in the neighborhood of what you're describing?
Yeah, I mean, I think very frequently, and it's a natural pattern of avoidance, is procrastination, avoiding difficult conversations, running away, sometimes fighting, right? It's the fight, flight, freeze response that is so natural to engage in under stress because it's what our brain tells us to do. Our brain goes immediately into survival mode. And the
Yes.
problem, of course, is in this modern environment, most of our stressors are not actual life and death, but our brain still treats them as such. And so we end up, in avoidance or procrastinating or running away or picking a fight because it's natural for our brain to do that. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily the most healthy choice.
And perhaps it's not addressing the deeper patterns or underlying feelings. So, nothing really actually gets
Absolutely.
resolved.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I tell people is to invite the tiger in for tea. So I call these external stressors tigers
Mhm.
because that's the way our brain treats it, right? Like a life and death animal that's coming to kill us kind of situation.
Yes.
And my ask of people is, wait, wait, wait. It's not a tiger, right? In the next 3 minutes, you're not going to be dead if you sit with it. So invite the tiger in for tea and sit with it for 3 minutes. Feel it, right? Acknowledge
Mhm.
it, understand it, allow your body to go to that physiological state where it's going to be heightened. And then remember, like, you're still alive. So this isn't something that's actually going to kill you despite all the warning bells going off in our brains.
So often, as humans, we're fueled by the activation of the nervous system, which is what you're
Yes.
describing, and it's our survival mechanisms at play. And I will say, an intimate relationship, it could just literally be a tone of voice, it could be a snarky look, and we can feel the activation beginning. And usually, this happens in nanoseconds. Our nervous system registers the bonding and intimate relationship as survival. So when that feels threatened, we get into that hijacked tiger play. And so what you're saying is if you can tolerate some of that, and you're not even saying calm, get back into regulation. You're saying, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, please don't try and calm down. It's like the worst advice people give themselves. Okay, I have to calm down here. Okay, first of all, you can't do it. Physiologically, you cannot just calm down, right? If you tell your adrenal glands, please don't release adrenaline right now, they don't listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of cruel for us to be telling ourselves to calm down because then we feel like failures and then we stress out even more because we're not, regulating and oh, how can everybody else do this? Release yourself from that. And then, to your point, sit sit in it. Notice the trigger. And one of the cool things about the stress response that I don't think gets talked about enough is the release of oxytocin. So the bonding hormone, right? The connection hormone, that's a major stress hormone. So when you're having that cortisol, that first influx, the second hormone, like right behind it, is oxytocin. So that is, I think it's a hormone of courage, asking you to reach out and connect, asking you to ask for help and to receive help. And in these intimate relationships, it behooves us to remember actually under stress, more than anything, I don't need to isolate, I need to connect. And so when I invite the tiger in for tea, or I ask people to invite the tiger in for tea, there's 2 questions I ask them to ask themselves. First of all, I want you to ask, "What is this stress here to help me to do?" Because it's there to help. It truly is, right? This isn't a bug in our system. It's a feature. It is trying to help you to perform. It's trying to help you do something. And then the second question is, who do I need to connect with in order to accomplish this, right?
Mhm.
So, do I need to connect with my inner child? Do I need to connect with my sister? Do I need to connect with my partner? Where do I need to have this connection so that I feel safe enough and good enough to move through the stress, not avoid it?
I'm so appreciating this. And I did not know that oxytocin was one of the hormones that was released in this fight or flight or freeze or fawn state.
Yeah.
So it's so fascinating. My mind's hypothesizing so many things because we, as survival, we are wired for human connection. So it
Yeah.
makes sense that that's part of the cocktail.
Yeah,
Uh, because
absolutely.
we need to be, but so often, to your point, when we feel a level of activation, well, I would say some have a more of a tendency to reach, others have a more of a tendency to kind of shut down. And you're really inviting some inquiry here around, can we identify what it is that is seeking attention? Can you repeat that first question again?
Yeah, the first question is, what is the stress response here to help me to do? Right?
Yes.
What is it here to
Yes.
help me to do? Because
Yes.
that heart rate, like it's pumping blood and oxygen to our brain to think better, right? It's pumping blood to our muscles so we can move. What is it that we have to do? What is it helping us to do in that moment?
Yes. And then the second around, who do I need to connect with, whether or not it's a
Yeah.
part of myself or someone that I want to have repair with.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is so, so helpful. I love the first
Yeah.
question because so often the human tendency is to go into blaming the thing that we're triggered by. If this circumstance were different,
Yes.
or if you wouldn't do this, then I
Yes.
would feel, we would feel fine.
Mhm.
And is that enough? Do you find that question being enough to slow that tendency of blaming or criticizing down?
It's a good start. And what I tell people is it's really important to recognize curiosity and fear can't coexist in the brain. So the more curious we can get, I mean, this is one of the coolest things, I think, the feature of the brain, right? Because 200,000 plus years, nobody ever had a tiger, like an actual tiger charging them. It was like, "Oh, I wonder how fast it's coming or like how many stripes it's got, right? So when we are able to get curious
Yes.
rather than blame, point fingers, look externally for solutions, and we just stay in this mode of asking questions to ourselves, to our partner, I think that is the go-to to really stay out of that fear, out of that classic stress response that's going to lead down a path that's not necessarily helpful. So
Mhm.
having those 2 questions in your pocket of like, "Okay, here's where to
Yeah, yeah.
start," is gonna be helpful.
So, as I experience, I've heard this before in the way I'm interpreting, help me if this is true in the science of what you know. In practice, if I'm feeling threatened by something with my husband and I know enough and I can calibrate enough to be curious, ask questions, I'm still scared. I still feel fear, but
Yes.
I'm opening up like that prefrontal cortex, like
Yeah.
the one that can get more information. And then I start to ease into more of that curiosity and the fear lessens, but I don't feel that it like goes away.
Okay, you're nailing it. So important. I'm so glad you brought this up. I get asked all the time, "Well, I wanna get rid of my stress. I wanna be outside of it." I'm like, "No, you don't. No, you don't." And in fact, that anxiety, that fear, that stress, it never goes away. And the reason for that is because what you're doing is important. And
It matters.
nobody gets stressed out over their shoe coming untied. Like, so stress is a barometer for how much you care, how
Yeah.
important something is. And so staying in that state and transferring some of that energy to being curious, opening up that prefrontal cortex, as you mentioned, right? This is what I call the transfer stage. This is where we're recognizing the energy, we're acknowledging it, we're not trying to get rid of it. We're just transferring some of it to excitement, curiosity, even anger. Now, anger directed at a problem, yeah, that's exciting, right? Because when you direct anger in a meaningful, productive way, it can be a very powerful emotion.
I agree. I
Yeah.
often have talked about it being fuel, it's an activation, and this is giving us perhaps the momentum to do the thing we're afraid of, right?
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so I want to go back just really quick so we don't move too far away because it feels like an important thing to flesh out a little bit. So when
Yeah.
you're saying don't try to avoid that activation state, so you're saying there's a bit of calibration, but you're staying with the energy. I'm not hearing like, oh, run if you're feeling like you want to run or fight if you want to fight. Like you're not
Right.
saying like fully embody the activation without any guidance. Like can you say, because sometimes people do feel like they want to hit, throw, whatever, and that's authentic.
Yeah,
Stay in the
absolutely.
energy.
3 minutes of screaming terror is what I talk about. When we have our stress response, it is really built for 3 minutes of screaming terror through a savanna, through a jungle, getting chased by a wild tiger, bear, or something that's gonna kill and eat us. So ask people for 3 minutes. I keep something I call a disaster diary, and I will cognitively spit out onto the page all of the disaster. Here's my anger, here's my frustration, and I will clench my one fist and I will write with the other furiously. But I'll set a timer for 3 minutes. And when that 3 minutes dings, I release my fist. I read through. I force myself to be cognitive. This is the like name it attainment kind of thing. I'm literally naming all of my fears, all of my anxieties. I'm forcing them onto the page, which when we write, we have to use our frontal cortex. So I'm starting to engage a little bit. And all of that energy, I'm not trying to push it aside. I'm not trying to push it away. I'm putting it onto something that I can then begin to use. So again, the activation is going to happen.
You're
It's not, yeah,
channeling, you're directing in constructive ways.
that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
So you're not trying to bypass or not feel what you're feeling. You're trying to expand the energy and give it a voice, give it a way to exist, but in a constructive way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
What does this look like in relationship? Like, I have my own ideas, but I would love to hear
Yeah.
from you because does it look like, oh, okay, I need a little bit of a break. I'm going to go do my process, or
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about how this looks live in action.
Sure. And this is going to look different for every
Yes.
couple, right?
Yes.
This is really important. Some people are so good at this, they can feel it. They feel that elevation. They're like, oh, we're going to take a break. Sometimes you get to the point where, like, oh gosh, voices are raised. I'm hearing the tone different, or I can't hear it in myself. I'll be honest. I'm a stress physiologist. I preach this. And when I get heightened, I can't hear my tone shift. I've actually recorded a conversation before with a partner and gone back and listened to it. And I'm like, I'm horrified because I feel like I'm being so kind and talking like this. Nope. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend having some kind of word or something that is silly and easy to just go, you know what, zebra. This is a zebra moment. Let's step back. Let's spend 3 minutes just like going into it for ourselves. So all the energy isn't pointed at the partner. Anybody can call it, right? It can be an audible at any time. So if my partner calls it, okay, I didn't even think I was heightened, and I can't come back with that. That is so important because so often I'm like, "What zebra? What are you talking about? I'm not heightened at all." Hmm, right? So just take that time, and 3 minutes really is a nice reset. It allows you to get into it, feel it all, and then return, and my ask is whenever you return, whenever you come back, start with a question. Start with a question. Yeah.
And I wonder that as someone is in practice with this more, that they'll be able to access it. So I'm reminded of like, so I've been doing this, but I would take usually 20 minutes because I had so many things to say. Sure, not so much anymore, but I used to. And there was fueled by a lot of anxiety or threat about, or just description around how my partner offended or crossed the line in some way. So all the justifications, but I would spend that time, but then I would typically get to a golden nugget around, okay, here's my vulnerability or here's my deeper worry. And then I remember having had a few years of doing that. And then we were in the car together and it's a heated conversation and just the slowing down and just pausing and breathing. I didn't really have a piece of paper to access. Just was quiet with it. Sometimes we speed up when we're in an escalated place, right? So
Absolutely.
quieting and then even the mental kind of just going through it mentally. And then I recognized I was afraid he didn't want to resolve it because sometimes he has a little bit more of a shutdown tendency. I have a little bit more of a pursuer tendency. And so I just needed to know that like he wanted to work on it. That was all that I needed. And I was like, but it was so vulnerable to say it, Rebecca. I was like,
It's terrifying. Yeah,
yes.
of course, because what if he says no?
Right.
And that is our deep, deep fear. I think there's a lot of value in, for me, one of the questions that I love, and one of the curiosities that I love is asking, what is it that you need me to hear that you think I'm missing?
Yeah.
Because, we'll spiral, we'll do this like chase thing where it's like, you're not getting it. So, what is it that I'm missing? What am I missing here? Because
That.
you love the person at some level, you're in this relationship for a reason, right? You love the person, they presumably love you. I'm missing, what am I not seeing? What am I not hearing? And how do we resolve this? Like, what is the thing that shuts the thing down, right? Do you need an apology? Do you need just to be heard? Do you need, what is that thing so that and you're working toward that goal together?
Oh, I so appreciate that question. it gets at an opportunity of accessing more of that vulnerability, I would think, because so often people hope in partnership that they'll tell the story and then expect their partner to decode what it is that they're needing or what the fear is, right? Like, I gave you all the information, can't you see?
This is so obvious. Yeah.
But then the person's like, I would not describe it that way. Let me tell you how I would describe it. And then they're caught up in the narrative. So this is helpful to direct attention.
Yeah. And I also sometimes, one of the things that I've learned in partnerships is, sometimes I just need you to hear how I feel. That's it. You are not allowed to respond for the day. Tomorrow, and I'm not allowed to respond for the day. And then I put it to bed. But that way, it's not a back and forth, right? Because that's just going to continue to spiral and our nervous systems never feel safe.
Yes. And there's a holding there, right? That I think sometimes when we don't hold
Yeah.
with that deepened understanding of just contemplating what your partner said, we might not absorb to the degree or have even the empathy to like, ooh, if it was me, is it like this? Or just really getting the nuances. And I think the learning, I don't know if this harkens back to your overall process, and I would love to get to your stress-born
Yeah.
love, but that the energy that's getting activated, how much it means to us. There's a reason, right? You said that that's something's alerting us. We want to look at the message, what that has to teach us.
Yeah.
And in relationship, there's an opportunity for perhaps deepening the dynamic in a way that is works better, or like what's the learning here? So we're not just having an outburst and then like quelling it and then like revisiting and having these perpetual things. Like we can actually learn.
Yeah. Grow. Otherwise, what's the point? Yeah. What's the point?
Yeah.
It's huge. I love that. Yeah, it's huge. I call that my trajectory stage. So you wanted to get into the formula. There's 3 stages. We've kind of gone through the first 2. All right.
Okay.
The first one is it's not a tiger. If it's not a tiger, I can invite it in for tea. I can acknowledge it. I can feel it because it's not actually going to kill me. The second is that transfer stage. So we're feeling all the energy. We're going to transfer it into adventure. We're going to transfer it into curiosity. We're going to transfer it into productive anger. We're going to use that heightened emotion for something else. And then the third is trajectory. So where am I pointing this? Where does this land? Frequently, what people do in this moment is inaction. Sit back and they're like, nope, because I've learned in previous relationships, or I have a story in my head of learned helplessness. And so nothing's going to change. As a result, I won't bother. I'm just going to sit back and accept it. And that builds obviously massive amounts of resentment and more fear because you can't be authentic in your relationship. So the trajectory is the learning. Like, where do we point this together so that we both understand, we come to a new level of learning, and we can level up and not have this happen again? Because when it spirals, we both understand each other better.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just want to have an example for people to really connect with or anchor with.
One of the major conflicts in relationships, right, is somebody feeling underappreciated. Okay. So I go to my partner and I say, I've been taking out the trash all the time. I do all the laundry. I do all of the dishes. I would just like some acknowledgement. All right. My partner is probably going to be triggered. More than likely, they feel like there's fingers pointing at them and they have this stress response. So invite the tiger in. I'm not a tiger. I'm not going to kill you. This is just venting of information. We're going to invite that in. We're going to get curious. Rebecca, how would it feel, or what would it look like for you to be acknowledged in this? Right? What is it that you need here? Do you need for me to pick up the slack? Do you need to feel like I'm seeing the things that you do? What is the goal? So I've transferred the energy now to curiosity, and we're pointing it towards a trajectory. And the point there in that trajectory is, are we trying to get to a solution? Like, do you need something to change? I need to take an action, or do you need to feel acknowledged, or do you just need to be heard? What is that? Because now I'm taken aback and I'm like, wait, I was heightened because I was feeling really angry about this, and now I'm like, wait, what do I want? Do I want to vent? Do I want you to pick up the slack? The curiosity has to go both ways, because I don't think very often we pick fights knowing what we want as a result. Right?
Yes.
So like, I know I pick fights all the time. I'm like, wait, do I want an apology? or do I want you to do something?
Hmm.
It's important. It's really important to understand that. So hopefully that's a useful
It
example.
is. It is. Thank you. So, in the one that was listening or being addressed with the complaint or the concern, and you were saying that partner might have some level of activation. So they're holding the energy and they're inviting curiosity to ask the question. So
Right.
is it a bit of tolerating the heightened state, but inviting curiosity to then transfer or channel?
Yeah, it's feeling it, right? It's acknowledging it. And even, even that partner saying and expressing vulnerably, Rebecca, this is really triggering for me. I feel really heightened right now because I feel like you're pointing at me and I need to understand what I can do about this, right? Like it's
Yes.
important that we acknowledge the feelings because again, I could easily come back and be like, well, that's not what I meant. I'm not, this isn't about you. This doesn't, right? Does it
Yeah.
easily isolate or easily escalate? So, allowing the other partner to have those feelings and emote those feelings
Yes.
and sitting in that as well and going, okay, it's okay to continue to get heightened. This is okay. And this is probably going to happen. So the trying to control the stress response is not our job. It's
I
going
love
to
it.
happen. You're going to get emoted. The idea is where do you together point that energy?
Losing yourself, thinking that there's like trying to suppress it and fight it, but then it kind of overwhelming the system and then
Yeah,
we're kind of lost in it.
yeah,
I'm kind of hearing, and help me if this feels right, but that we can acknowledge. I really love just the metacognition of like, or meta conversation around here's what's happening
yeah,
for me, or here's what I'm noticing.
yeah.
Right. And it's like, you matter so much to me. I'm afraid I did something to upset you, or I feel a little bit of like an alarm here. So let me help organize, or can I ask you a couple questions to kind of seek more understanding? And, or I'm feeling defensive. Can we just slow down so I can,
Yeah.
understand here? So I think there's lots of ways to do this and it is tricky. It happens so fast.
But Jessica, to your point, like the second I hear you saying, I'm feeling a little X right now, like immediately, first of all, it takes incredible vulnerability to say that. But immediately it knocks me off of my horse a little bit. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're an emotional creature too. Okay, we're in this together. And it puts us kind of back on the same side.
Yeah. It's disarming.
It is disarming. Yeah.
The one that I don't know if you find this, but I imagine either in partnership, one or both people have more of this avoidant tendency. It's almost like you're inviting a reframe on stress and what gets activated. So I guess if you want to speak to if the reframe feels right for you, any thoughts about that? And then secondly, for let's say the dynamic where one is more comfortable addressing and using what is brought up as information and trying to learn from it,
Mm.
and the other one isn't, and they're more in this avoidant, and it's even though the conversations and they in a more regulated state, they're like, "Yes, that sounds really lovely," and yet I just continue.
This is a tricky pattern, and
Yeah,
I'll be really honest with you. This is not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is understanding the stress response. Avoidant behaviors, oof, they're really
okay,
challenging.
got
But here's what I'll say to it: it's natural and it's normal, right?
yeah,
You're running away from the stress response, and the reframe piece I think is so important because to me, again, the most purposeful and meaningful lives are full of stress. So this was a 2013 study, right? Looking at what brings life meaning and purpose. And the number one correlate was past stressful events, current state of stress, even future worry and anxiety. And so when we reframe all of these conflicts, all of these challenges as actually, this is meaningful, this is important. What that means is that rather than seeing this as a problem, and then particularly for avoidance, you're running away from the very thing that is bringing meaning and purpose to your life. If you can pause there for a second and say, wait a second, I'm actually running away. I'm avoiding the thing that's bringing meaning and purpose to my life. That's a moment to go, okay, maybe there's a little shift that I can make where I can begin to run at that roar or just take a step toward the roar. You don't have to run at it, just take a step toward it. Because again, stress isn't going away. And the more we can move through it, that the better life will be.
yes, we're advocating for what matters. We're in co-creation of the things that are really meaningful. So, I mean, conversely, going back to your origin story, that we can be avoiding, and then things, I don't know that this is exactly, but for people who notice that, because the stress doesn't go away, or the injury or the pain doesn't go away. So we avoid it, we might get that short-term relief, but what you're really describing is we're in service of the long-term gain, and that if we have this accumulation, short-term relief, avoid, avoid, avoid,
Yeah.
we're participating in a life that isn't what we're wanting.
You're complicit. You're complicit in your own stress. And it's so hard to hear. It's such a hard thing to say to people. It's such a hard thing to receive. But when I think if I frame it this way, it's sometimes helpful. I've asked people to think about a project or an accomplishment that they're most proud of. I want you to go back in time to when you were in the middle of that project. What was your stress level on a scale of 0 to 100? And I'm guessing you can guess the data on it, right? Most people are stressed out of their gourds when they're doing their most meaningful, purposeful work. And so the idea of avoiding stress, of avoiding conflict, of avoiding these difficult conversations is literally running away from the thing that you'll look back on and go, wow, I'm so proud of that.
Mm.
I'm so proud that we did that, that we were able to move through that together. It's pretty powerful to reconcile with that and go, oh yeah, I don't want to run away from that.
I'm also aware, Rebecca, I don't know if you feel like this is important or relevant to the stress curve. I remember as in my pre-doc internship, I worked at San Jose State University, and I was trying to help students understand the stress curve, because I think in modern life, we'll get the message that if we drive harder, we push harder, that we're going to there's like this endless reserve of energy, but we often run up against a drop off of where. So do you want to describe that if it feels
Yeah,
relevant?
sure.
I think we're
Sure.
getting at an optimal. If we're too stressed, right? Like that can compromise our system.
I want to push back on this.
Yeah.
So what you're describing is the Yerkes-Dodson curve, right? Which is
Right.
for listeners, it looks like an upside down U. So if you have no stress in your life, you don't have a lot of stress, you also don't have a lot of performance. So your performance is very low. As you're like maybe a deadline's coming up and you're like, oh gosh, I've been procrastinating, your performance increases to a point. And then according to the Yerkes-Dodson curve, you start to crash, right? It's too much stress and you can't do it and you've pulled the all-nighter and it's just your performance crashes. So that's been the traditional model of stress for decades. And I actually pushed back on this a little bit. And here's why. Olympic athletes break world records when the pressure and the stress is at its peak, right? So they actually have the ability to perform really at their very best under tremendous pressure and stress. So, what does that mean? What that means is that so much of stress is what we create here. Humans are so weird. We're the only species on the planet that creates our stress with our thoughts. So, yes, there's all kinds of external factors that you can't control. Those are major stressors and they're going to affect your performance. But at the end of the day, a lot of our performance and a lot of our stress is created by our internal thinking. And, the example I give is like lions in the wild. They go out, they hunt, they fail 80% of the time. Can you imagine failing 80% of the time in conversations that you're having with a loved one, or, you're just not communicating well? You'd be walking around all day just like, I suck. I can't, I'm a horrible human being. Lions, when they fail, they take a nap.
Mhm.
Right? There's no internal dialogue that is like creating more stress. So one of the things that I think we can do as humans is just recognize our internal tigers and check our stories, because that's often the thing that is pushing us over that hump into this decline of performance. So
Mhm.
and I'll say one more thing here because I think this is really fascinating. This is another 2013 study looking at 30,000 Americans over 8 years' time. And they looked at people who had very high levels of stress and asked them, do you believe that stress is bad for your health? And people who had very high levels of stress, who believed that their stress was bad for them, died at a 43% higher mortality rate. Wow, that's huge, right? And that's kind of fitting based on that original Yerkes-Dodson curve, like you're starting to crash. The most interesting thing about this study was that the same people who had very high levels of stress, but believed that that stress wasn't bad for them, they had the lowest mortality rates of the entire study, lower than people who had very little stress in their life.
Hmm.
So what that means is over the course of 8 years, 182,000 people died prematurely, not because of too much stress, but because of the belief that that stress was bad for them.
Mhm.
That's wild, right?
Yes, I know my brain is like, I'm contemplating all the things that you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. I can just see for myself that when I'm in this place where I'm having the internal stress, whatever thoughts I'm having, versus when I don't even have time to be in my head around the fears or the worries. I'm just performing. Let's just use that language for the and I'm just riding that wave, so to speak. I don't know that I feel as stressed. So I get that. That makes
There it
perfect
is.
sense.
Yeah.
There's probably other questions I have around long term, but
Of
I
course.
still feel like your point is really valid, and it debunks some of just the stress that how we relate to stress
Yeah,
is the bigger component that you're trying to bring our attention to.
absolutely.
Okay. I
Yeah,
love
absolutely. And you're right to question that, right? Like if you are living in a violent, I am not here to say, oh, good for you. Like that's great stress. Use it. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let me be very clear about that. But mindset is incredibly important for healthy relationships to continue to be healthy.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
I know we could keep talking about this. I mean, I'm thinking even about man's search for meaning and how, like, just the
Viktor
mindset.
Frankl,
Yes,
absolutely.
being in this and how much that impacted his experience. So, I mean, really horrific circumstance. And
I mean, this is fascinating stuff though, because we talk all the time about PTSD, right?
yes,
And rightly so.
yeah,
It affects about 8% of Americans, or I should say 8% of Americans are diagnosed with it. I think everybody experiences PTSD. I really do.
I
I
do
think
too.
going through life is traumatic. But the cool thing is that nobody talks about is post-traumatic growth. And 50% of people without going through any kind of protocol experience these post-traumatic growth symptoms. You're going through something difficult, whether it's a difficult conversation with a loved one, miscarriages. There's a million things that happen in relationships that are traumatic, truly traumatic, but they often lead to deeper connection and more sense of purpose and a greater connection to the community. So, yeah, again, it just kind of proves the point of like avoiding stress isn't the goal. It's going through it in community and finding that purpose behind it.
And the opportunity to metabolize things that were very overwhelming, right? When you're saying not push away, that we're able to process and how we do that and the learning that comes from that. So thank you so much. I know we're winding down here. To that point, just one quick note. Do you feel like as people get into this practice of asking the question of like, what is in this for me to learn? Or again, that first question,
Yeah. What is this stress here to help me to do?
help me to do, yes. So help me to do that. Maybe perhaps it is like I've got too much on my plate today, right? Or that we can recognize I just need to breathe a little bit more, or I'm like too tight around this, or this is something that has a lot of meaning and I want to actually address this and create change here.
I don't think there's any wrong response to that question.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so last two questions. One is for someone who's a little more nonverbal, do you have any other tips for that 3-minute kind of tool around writing all the things down?
If you have 3 minutes and so I'll say, and it's a safe space,
Yes.
100% scream, like yell, punch things. Pillows, don't hurt yourself, don't hurt other people, but get activated. So again, in that moment, our cortisol is going through the roof to help activate us. So it's literally preparing you to fight or to flee. So if you want to do fast feet in place, run as fast as you can. That's a really great opportunity to use that energy. And then after 3 minutes, if you're still alive, which you will be, your brain goes, oh, I must have outrun the tiger. Oh, the threat is over. And so we start to like the cortisol starts to come down at that point and oxytocin starts to come in.
Mhm.
And so this is a great opportunity to do whatever feels important in that moment. Again, for me, it's writing it out, but for others, it may just be like squeezing or moving. Body movement is really, really great in that moment.
Yes, and somatically, to the point about trauma, we hold trauma or overwhelming situations in the body. So utilizing the
Absolutely.
body as a force or as a way to move, we could potentially have a new felt sense that gives us insight or access to new understanding. So that's
Absolutely.
okay, great. Wonderful. And then I was going to ask about any type of habit or step that you want to encourage people to be more in the practice of turning towards and holding space for this. And we've talked a little bit maybe more about the first question, and maybe you could offer something around the reach or the oxytocin, or who do I need to connect with? Mhm.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I'll cite another study because I'm a super nerd.
Love
So there is a study. It was done recently. I'll just say it's a recent study, and they looked at 90 different workplace interventions, things that we think are going to help our stress response, and all 90 of them failed. Like nothing made it better. Some of it made it worse. The
Wow.
exception of one thing, and I'm talking like massage, coaching, like all the things that we do. There was one exception, and I love this so much. The exception to the rule there was community service. So, service to others was the one thing that actually helped to mitigate our own stress response. When we reach out and we serve other people, we actually are serving ourselves. And so, in partnerships too, I think this is really powerful. When you see the other person as part of somebody that you serve. Uh,
Mhm.
and again, I'm not saying avoid yourself or like don't give yourself what you need. But if you can frame it as my stress response is here and it's pointing to this person is important to me and I need to figure out how I can serve this person in this moment. If you both are in that mindset, you got this, right? It really
Forget about it.
that switch. It really helps flip that switch. Yeah.
Ah, that's powerful. Oh, thank you so,
Yeah.
so much.
You're so,
Uh,
so welcome.
yeah, Rebecca, I know you help and support people in various domains. Do you want to say a little bit more about your work broadly?
Sure. Yeah. Mainly right now, I'm a keynote speaker. So I get to travel the world and talk to companies and associations and individuals. And it's such a blessing. I mean, how lucky do I get to be able to, this is my main gig. I also have a book and a master class. So my master class is really about using stress and anxiety. And I built it specifically mainly for millennials and Gen Z who are really, really struggling right now. So anybody can take it. I'm not trying to eliminate anybody in those generations, but yeah, it's a pretty powerful way to help, I guess, help see stress a little bit differently.
Excellent. And so, for someone listening that perhaps has a company and is really appreciating what you're speaking about, do you offer a talk and then something to help them implement?
Yeah. So yeah, I do keynotes, I do workshops. I've got my book. I've got a whole actually 150-page workbook that accompanies it. Look, we can go into this for days,
Okay.
weeks.
Yes.
What you need is what we can deliver. So we've got a lot of customized access to resources. And I greatly appreciate you asking that question.
Wonderful. And you want to say the name of your book?
Sure. My latest book is called Springboard: Transform Stress to Work for You. And my previous book is called Instinct. So yeah, really, really excited if you all want to buy those and reach out. I've always loved to hear feedback, questions, ideas, comments. I will respond to you. It might take me a minute, but I always will get back to you.
And is there a website you want to mention?
Yeah, my website is just my name. So it's Rebecca Heiss, HEISS.com. You can find all of my resources, speaking, books, masterclass, everything is there.
Well, thank you again. I've really enjoyed all that you've shared here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jessica. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to today's conversation again with Dr. Rebecca Heiss. You'll find all of the links, resources, and a full transcript at drjessicahiggins.com/podcast. On the website, you'll find many more resources, how to get support in cultivating more connection in your relationship. It's an honor and a privilege to spend this time with you. Until next time, I hope you take great care.